Welcome to the Cash Flow Project Podcast. Are you looking to better your financial situation by increasing your cash flow? Too busy to hunt for real estate deals or don't know where to start? Then you're in the right spot. Join us as we dive in and talk about investing for cash flow using multifamily real estate.
Welcome to the Cash Flow Project. I'm your host, Duke Ong with Tri-City Equity Group. Today we have Jason Yarusi on the show. With me is my co-host, Vince Gethings.
Hey, Duke. Super excited to have Jason on the show. We're going to talk about some awesome things, going from scaling up to acknowledging that you're buying a business when you're dealing with apartment buildings instead of just acquiring some rental units. It's a very, very important distinction that people need to know about. Also, some tips on tracking deals that may have fallen off that you're looking, you circle back to a couple months later, and a bunch of other things like team alignment and tips on energy conservation strategies when acquiring rental units. So you're definitely going to want to stay tuned and listen to this show.
Jason is an active real estate syndicator with Yarusi Holdings, a multifamily investment firm with over 800 units under management. The firm repositions properties through operational efficiencies, moderate to extensive renovations, and complete rebranding. He hosts the Jason and Peely Project, a YouTube channel and podcast that sets the foundation for building mental fortitude, growing wealth, and improving health by providing actionable steps and avoiding missteps. Their monthly meetup, the New Jersey Multifamily Foundation Club, has over 2,000 members and focuses on real estate syndication. Jason, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
So for those who aren't familiar, tell us a little bit more about what you do and what you're working on now.
Sure. Yeah. And again, I appreciate, I'm jealous. As I said, my wife and I were supposed to be there around this time, so visit some family over in Hawaii. But we'll be back shortly. We come from a heavy construction background, and we started moving into real estate back in about 2013, 2014, and transitioned into large multifamily back 2016 with our first acquisition in 2017. We typically focus on 75 to 150 units in BC markets and specific submarkets where we can either fix the property, whether it's on the management side or the property side. So right now we have assets in Louisville, Kentucky, north side of Atlanta, and we're bringing on a property currently in Pennsylvania, Eastern PA.
Oh, nice. So what is your why for building passive cash flow?
So it goes back really, Peely and I met a long time ago, my wife and I, in New York City. We were both on different paths from where we are today, working in the arts, and we actually met running some restaurants. And from there, Hurricane Sandy happened here in New Jersey, a mega storm that just really decimated the East Coast. And my father has this mom and pop small niche construction business that was aligned for moving and lifting houses. There's actually one house lifter in Hawaii that I know of that I've met. I met him at an event. But what we actually do is take houses and we lift them high or move them off to really flood proof or make them more resilient to future flooding. So when Hurricane Sandy happened, my dad's business exploded. So back in 2012, we moved out to New Jersey. Peely and I were just getting together, and my brother, who was working for me, moved out as well, and we helped the family business. But the business was so busy, and it was great to help, but it was going further away. Peely and I were pregnant with our first child, and was going further away from a point of we wanted to have the ability to choose our life and choose the path of our life and not be dictated by work. Because just like most service businesses, if you don't work, you don't get paid. So we started looking at where are the spaces that we could get back our time, find a new element to really just let us to control our path. And real estate, of course, sounded like a natural progression. And we looked at what we thought was the right choices. So Peely got a real estate license, and I started, flipping, wholesaling. So we actually became active real estate, flippers with hands-on approach. And that quickly turned out that we were so busy with construction, and now we brought on all these other active capacities. And we said, well, this is cool, but we're going farther away from the goal. We're going farther away from getting back our time, getting back and setting our outcome. And it took us really 2-3 years of doing that to discover buying smaller properties out of state and really using our management experience to dictate a process that we could put in place and manage those properties efficiently. And when we did that, it occurred to me that if we just did this on a bigger scale, a larger scale, we could grow from the economy scale, that the upside was tremendous. And so we sold those properties, dove in to learn everything we could from the right people about large multifamily, and then took that next step to buy a 94 unit from the couple small properties we had back in whatever it was, mid of 2017.
That's exactly the same thing I'm doing. So sorry to cut you off, Luke, but yeah. So I started with the duplexes and the fourplexes because that's what I thought was attainable. Mm-hmm. And I was creating myself another job and not really financial freedom. Mm-hmm. And I realized, the light bulb clicks on of once you get past the mental roadblock of large commercial real estate apartments, it's really not that hard. And the scalability and scale and everything, that's like a big buzzword. But really, it's like you can, with the larger properties, you can afford to hire better people. You can afford to better systems. Then that's some of the stuff that people don't talk about is like the economies of scale of just being able to be hands off because you have so much more revenue coming in. You can afford to build a real company and not just your weekend cash flow hobby, which happens a lot with the smaller properties. So that's awesome. That sounds like you two are a few years ahead of me, but I'm on the right path. And a couple more years, and I'll be sitting where you're sitting. So,
well, you awesome. Hit it. I find that we're either, one step ahead, one step behind. We're all within the same range. But you hit the key term about, treating it like a company, right? Because when you get to larger properties, well, you can treat it like a business. So right now I'm buying a business, right? So each time I buy a business and I look at how can I, if I was buying a franchise or a car wash or a liquor store, how can I take this business and make this business perform to a better capacity? And it just happens that this business has people living in the business, right? And when you start thinking like that, everything starts working in your favor, right? The 2 and 3 families, you can't really control the narrative, right? Because even if you're getting a loan, they're going to be looking at you. You're going to be looking, not that you can be a bad actor, but you have a lot more advantage because the lender is now focused on the property. If it's 100 units, what can the property do? You can get contracts for the property. You can, like you said, hire employees where instead of having a plumber on a duplex have to run out there, see what part he needs, assess it, go out, get the part. Yep. And now you're 5 hours in for, a 30-minute repair. If you have on-site maintenance, you can have someone that can tackle that project that's built into the budget. So it allows you to align with a bigger focus. And it is all mental, right? And you're adding more zeros. And as soon as you can get past that and understand that everything's going to work in your favor, the larger you can mentally prepare to go. Because your team members, the property managers who typically handle a lot of single family homes, that's usually, it's a hard thing to scale on, right? Just like we are hard to scale with a bunch of single families. It's also hard for that property manager, right? They need thousands or hundreds or, a lot of single family homes that are traditionally not set up right. But these larger multifamily property managers, they're more aligned to have a business that you can grow within.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons we love multifamily. Mm-hmm. So you have a ton of experience in the syndication space. So let's go back to that 94 unit, that first one you did. So how did you find it and how did you structure it?
Sure. So we had looked in a couple different markets, and we were actually down in North Carolina really putting the work in, and it just wasn't clicking. So at one point we decided after 6 months to pivot to Louisville, Kentucky, and we pivoted over there and really we had the process down on what we were doing. So we just, put it into finding our new team members and everything else. And we actually, through a connection, knew a property was looking to sell, and it was a property that the owner had passed away. He was in his 90s, and there was 5 or 6 kids, if you can call them kids. They were like 50 and 60 who didn't live in the state and wanted to sell this property and keep they had 1,000 single family houses, but they thought that the 94 unit was the problem. So they said, "Now we'll just take on 1,000 houses and get rid of this big, large property." And it was neglected. So the building was in tremendous shape. The owner had actually built it himself. They were like 1970s, whatever it was the term, 1970, 1974 build. And they were built like tanks, but the management was completely off. And we had a million things that we found when we got into it that we were able to just easily fix in terms of like accepting pet fees or, cleaning out the storage and using the storage down, getting rid of 3 maintenance people, having 1 that could service the property, just a lot of things that were being overlooked because their attention was on the single family homes. But we made an offer. Basically, we were not close on our original offer. They were asking 3.2. And the way it was being operated, we could only offer 2.1. And they came back and countered at 3.2. So it was not a very good negotiation. So they basically came back at where they started. And we just said, listen, we're too far apart. We appreciate it. And we walked away. But what we had started to do is to track all of the properties that we were seeing and all the properties we were offering on. So another 4 or 5 months had gone by, and we saw that the property didn't trade. And we went back to them and we actually raised our price 50,000. So they're still at 3,200,000. We were at 2.1 million. So we're back at 2,150,000. And within 2 hours, 3 hours, we had a counter back at 2.6. So we knew that time had now alerted them that this is what the market can hold. But the advantage we had is that all the other people that are potentially offering on the property just thought they were unrealistic and just forgot about the property. We had the luck or happenstance that we came back at the right time. We were able to negotiate the property and we closed on it 2.3 million. So it was a beautiful little deal we walked into. It was structured as a 506B. So it was a lot of our internal network that we had built out, from living in New York City, friends, family that were part of this first deal, and it was a great win. We actually held it just sold in January, pretty much 3.5 years ahead of schedule. Really crushed returns. Just timing was right that we made the choice to sell it.
So you made an awesome point on there that you started tracking offers and tracking deals, and a lot of people don't do that. They'll look at a deal, they'll throw an offer, no response, gets rejected, and they just scrap it and then moving on. But creating some kind of tracking system, either Excel or maybe a more sophisticated one, to go back and retouch these brokers and these sellers periodically, every quarter, every 6 months or something. Because one thing we know in real estate is nothing is really no. It's always just not right now. Like there's no real hard no's in real estate. Everything's negotiable. If you just keep re-engaging, it may just be not right now. And then something happened in their life. Maybe they woke up to the market, like you said, and they came around. But I think that's awesome. That's a lot of people. A lot of things we see people don't do is they just write an offer. Oh, I got this, got rejected. They get discouraged and they never go back and re-engage.
Yeah, motivation changes. Yeah, it definitely does. And so you want to take into account here that the reason the person may be selling today is going to change 3 or 5 or 6 months out. And you also, if they're so outside the box, right, and they're not realistic on their offer, either they're just an unrealistic person, or when they get the other 12, 15, 30 offers in that are 30% discount to where they're asking, they may say, okay, maybe what I do have here is not what I thought I have. And so I could hold on to it longer, or now I have to make the decision. Okay, I do meet with the market now demands. And you like you said, there's a million reasons why people sell. And so getting the narrative when you're speaking to brokers or the seller or the property manager is always important, right? Are they selling because this is the end of their hold period? Are they selling because they're undercapitalized? Are they selling because there's a partner disruption? Are they selling because, someone passed away? Are they selling, fill in the blank? Because all those help to the narrative, because potentially the deal can be structured in a way that could be beneficial to all parties.
So what challenges did you overcome with that deal?
Oh, man. There's always challenges, right? It's like when you have 100-something people living in a building, you can pro forma all you want, but there's going to be certain things that came up. One thing that happened, which was just nuts, is that within the course of like 2 months, we had 3 people pass away of natural causes. And in Kentucky, there's you go through an eviction process in terms of the protocol to have people out. But it was like we had like 2 in a week where we were confused that it was like, was this the same person? It was actually 2 people. It was just one of these very random events that all happened in a sequence here, where it was elderly people living in the building, and then they all passed away in the same point. But luckily, we had the partners in place. The property management companies who were very versed, that just knew the process. Okay, so this has happened. Now they have 6,000 units under management. This is not the first time this has happened. So here's the steps to deal with this. So we had that. We actually had. This was not a dangerous area. It actually had a lot of path of progress coming, but there was a neighboring building owned by the city, and they were just completely not, of course, taking care of the property. And there was a bad actor moved in, had a bunch of people staying there that weren't tenants, and there was actually a shooting, and it scared a bunch of our tenants there. So we used one of our vacant units and offered it up as a stakeout to the Metro Police, and they actually arrested like 12 or 13 people. So that was another one where you of course can't pro forma that out. And we had a power surge that happened from the utility department that again took down maybe it was 6 or 8 units with underground electric wires bursting that were put underground, And that happened. And, that was a point where, again, having the right team in place, it was able to circumvent the problem, fix the problem in less than 24 hours for something that if it was here and I didn't have the right team in place, that could be a couple of days of putting a couple of people out of their home.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the stakeout thing. I forget where I learned that. I think it was like Dave Lindahl or something like that, of like, partnering with local law enforcement when you have, because a lot of people, like I have drug dealers, I have people calling me saying that, other residents saying that, hey, the tenants in this place, I'm pretty sure they're dealing drugs. Like, what do you do? And he gave some examples of like, working with local law enforcement, because a lot of people don't realize it's private property. So the cops necessarily aren't going to just come onto your property if there's something illegal going on. Like, you have to like give them permission a lot of the times.
A good trick is that you actually call the police departments prior to taking on an acquisition. So, just say, hey, I'm buying this building, and what do you think? Because they'll give you the story. If they're there every other weekend or something else, they'll talk to the narrative there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we do that. It's in our due diligence checklist to go call the, we do, the step is, call local police, local sheriffs, and then the local, the code enforcement office. See if there's any active code violations. So that's like right in the sequence of events and due diligence. So I know one of the things that you're big on is operations. It sounds like of improving operations and specifically cutting costs. What are some of the things that you do, like your best practices on cutting costs for operations and increasing NOI that way?
Yeah, and that's always a big focus. Traditionally, you have to look at it here. So you can have rent bumps, but there's always so much that you can squeeze out of a tenant base unless you're going to completely change the tenant base, right? Change the dynamic of the tenant base. So I always look at it from an outside-in approach. If I can fix the property, make it a better place to live, then show the tenants, hey, this is going to perform better than it did before. It's going to be a better environment. It's going to be the best product for a slightly cheaper price than what it is around there. Then I'm able to raise and move rents up to market. So we'll go look at a lot of things, especially if they're older 1970s buildings. A lot of it's going to be master metered. And if it's not an area that I can build back, I'm going to look at ways that I can really reduce on the utilities. And one of the major focuses is, of course, tenant training. And it sounds odd, but tenants get accustomed that if it's an owner before them who just doesn't fix stuff, well, I'm not going to waste time calling the owner because he's not going to come anyway. So why take that 10 minutes of my life and try and chase this guy down? So the toilet can run for 3-4 weeks, not a big deal. A leak under sink. So we'll do water walks, getting into the property and regular water walks to check on any active leaks, fix them, and also show tenants that we're there to fix the problem. That, and then we'll couple that by changing out original toilets into low E-flush toilets, changing out shower heads, faucets, and we've seen water bill, drop 20-30% on properties. And if you look at the 94 unit, the first one we talked about, we actually did that. We did a water savings program in there. We cut our water bill down by something like 30%. I think the overall bump in value from that was around 350K, right? So you have a 350,000 bump up in property value based on changing toilets, which is shows you how much can happen on a large building that if you did that on a single family home, no one's going to pay you, $10,000 for a new toilet. So that's always one big one we'll jump into there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of my biggest things too. As soon as we go in, we do, I don't have a cool term like a water walk, but yeah, we had the whole,
not mine. I'm just taking it from other people.
Okay. Yeah. So we have we go through, have the plumbers go in and, we put the low flow, shower heads, the aerators and all the faucets. We don't have replace toilets. We do the valve in the back. Because a lot of them, it's just like the seals just deteriorated, and like I said, it'll just leak for weeks and weeks and months. But yeah, that's like stage one, phase one things we do after acquisition. We go through, do all inspections, everything like that. Because like you said, yeah, we've had tenants where they just have towels like shoved underneath the bathroom vanity. Yeah. Like, what are you doing? So we're finding creative ways to maybe incentivize them without incentivizing bad behavior, which means like, hey, if you find, if you do a water leak, here's some incentive, maybe a gift card or something like that. Or if you report a water leak early, but then make sure that they're not causing the water leak. So they get they get the gift card. So we're still trying to figure that one out. But that is extremely important, is that water conservation. Because like you said, it can have exponential growth when it comes to your NOI and property value.
Yeah, 1,000%.
So what is your underwriting? How's your underwriting been affected by everything that's going on. We're in June 2020, coronavirus, any kind of uncertainty, the outlook in the market. Has your firm changed anything?
Yeah, we're just looking at really flat rent growth for the next 12 months, next 16 months, how that could affect really what we're looking at, one on our current properties, but two also on new acquisitions, right? So taking into account there, plus looking at the fact that you've had a lot of people that are home in their apartments, right? So one thing to take into account is that the utility expenditures and the CapEx, it's going to run up for a minute because people, instead of being in their apartments for 8 hours or 10 hours and sleeping for half that, or that maybe they're in the building, they don't leave their apartment, especially during quarantine. So you have to look at, you're going to have a couple months here where your utilities are going to run higher because usage is going up. And with quarantine, we weren't actively going into units to keep social distancing. So there's going to be an uptick in repairs and maintenance that come out as we're just picking up on actually actively going back in units. So looking at those two parts, we're definitely performing right now where we're at based on the current assets, but we're also looking forward on future acquisitions that we don't want to bake in that there's going to be that perceived rent bump immediately, because it's going to be more keeping heads in beds and leasing procedures and really focusing on renewals. And it's better to get a $50 rent bump than to have a delta of a tenant move out and have a turn quote of $2,500 just to get ourselves $150. It'd be better to keep those tenants, if they're good paying tenants and good actors, in the beds.
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of the topics that we just had talked about with our property manager not more than an hour ago, was what is our leasing strategy going forward the next few months, and very similar conversation.
Yeah,
what we had. So do you have any deals in the pipeline now that you're looking at, or we kind of paused?
No, we are under contract on one, and it's actually a secondary behind, but it was a pre-COVID. We had a discount that came back with COVID, and we have a couple of addendums in the pipeline. It's pushes out to I think a September 1 closing. So we have a lot in there. We're going to see, of course, July the CARES Act change up. So we have a lot of things that would give us the potential to walk away from both sides if the world blows up. But again, it's a beautiful deal. The property just there Friday. It's in amazing condition. It's a mismanaged property that the owner brought a portfolio. This is the smallest one. The others took his attention, and he's been letting this basically run its course. So we're $200 under market on rents. Leasing's bullish. We can actually get $300 up, but right now, to market with a classic upgrade, we're 200 under. So there's a potential that there's a lot of things we can do on utilities, a lot of things we can do with some of the contracts there. And we're excited to see that one really work its way out.
So for the addenda, like what did you use to? Oh. what did you use to kind of deal with all the uncertainty?
So for the addendums,
yes.
Yeah, so we actually pushed this off twice, and we actually waited we had an agreement that we didn't sign a PSA until Pennsylvania was opening back up. So we signed a PSA June 5th is when it was opened back up. And from there, it gave us, so we had the entire time to do due diligence up to this, because we had this back from February. And then we had, I forget the way they termed it out there for the COVID addendums, that we built it in with thresholds that if something, external force or external, thing that was outside of the control of either party, that was the opportunity for the deal to be canceled without cause.
Did you do any kind of occupancy floors or anything like that? Like, hey, we're going into contract at 80%, but if this thing drops at to 65 due to Corona or whatever, that gives us an out as well.
Yeah, we're going agency on it, because it's actually there's one vacancy which is actually on the property right now, so it's set up for agency that's already built in, that we have to keep to these parameters, because this is the loan dynamics we're going for. Yeah,
that was an awesome one that I've heard out of this, was the occupancy floors and using those as an out, but also a reason to move forward. So that extra security for the buyer. What about, you said you had maybe my last question, a price reduction. Did they do a price reduction, or did you get a seller credit back? This won't air until after September.
Yeah, no worries. So we actually got a price reduction on it, which actually, so we took part of it. We were negotiating back and forth. We got our number, and then COVID happened and all these other points. But this, maybe as nice as the property is, I think it's one of those things where, to him, a property this size, because he's dealing with 300 unit properties, is more a thorn in the side. So we'd rather stop having a thorn in the side than on that fact of actually saying, okay, I'm not going to fight this and go back and have to find new buyers and go through the other point. We know these guys can close. I'll take the reduction. Let's just get this done. And we'll have this set up. And that worked for us. It allowed us to still work in the plan that we wanted. It gave us more comfort. Even though the deal worked where we were originally, this gives us more comfort that if we have some disruption with bad debt or other points, it's not going to crush us, because on the front end here, we have this opportunity to get in a property with the discount. And loan terms with the weight here, we actually had, we had 1 year IO, and I think, and where we were on a rate, since we've now gone under contract, our term has gone 2 years IO, and our rate's down, I think, 0.15 or something. So it's a nice little drop in our bucket that's happened with time on our side. Sometimes that can go the opposite way too, right? You can lose out if you wait too long, right? But this has worked in our favor.
With the agency, are you having to pay the 12 or 18 months reserves?
Yeah,
okay.
we have reserves on that one, but factored in, and it's still do your part. And I think even I'm hearing today that they've actually loosened them as well more. I don't know if the terms are coming out. I don't know what it is today, but by the time we get to closing, we'll see. We're confident it's moving in the right direction. It's not gonna push up. So on that point, the property performs. What we have to do is continue to do our performance, and that money comes back.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you'll get that. If you already raised it, then it's just a liquidity injection back into the working capital, or you can just disperse it, which will be a nice check for your shareholders. So one of the things that we did on ours was we opted for a seller credit at closing, because our lender also required the 12 months reserve. So we got a seller credit, and then just gave that seller credit right to the bank, put in their escrow account. So our underwriting essentially didn't change for that. I don't know if agency would allow for that, but we had a local community bank that was completely okay with us getting a seller credit and then pretty much putting in an escrow account for a year. And then as long as we hit the DSCR requirement, whatever they gave us, they would, release it back to us, and then we can just disperse it as we see fit. So
there's some banks that aren't even requiring reserve. I mean, I talked to a lender today. They do, multifamily refi, and they love multifamily. It's a credit union, and reserves, right? So there's parties out there, right? You just have to keep having the conversations, but you don't want to look at your long-term hold strategy and see what's the right tool.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so let's shift gears to our fire round. What is the best book that you recommend other than Rich Dad Poor Dad?
Have to be real estate?
Anything. Business, real estate.
I love David Goggins' book, You Can't Hurt Me. I run ultra marathons, so that's a great book.
I got a story for you on that one. So I got his book on Audible, and I listened to it running. And about 2 weeks ago, I was out running, and I did something to my knee, LCL injury or something like that. Yeah. So I'm sitting there like limping home after this 4 mile run. So I got like a half mile, just like almost crying. And then he's in my head, like, stop being a little, whatever, like his whole thing. He's like, suck it up and all this stuff. And I'm like, man, I'm such a wimp. Like, as I'm like almost crawling home because my knee hurt so bad.
That's great. Yeah, it's a story. If you have kids, don't listen to it in the car. But it's it is. You take from that a lot. You can see what the endure. It goes back to mindset. What the mind stops you to doing, what your body can keep going, and just no matter how hard you think your day is, there's someone else there dealing with things that you can never imagine.
Yeah. So speaking of ultra running, how is that compared to multifamily and business and all that?
It's very similar. I think a lot of it is that, with multifamily, like if you show up and do something today, you don't pivot and turn the property, right? It's a long play. You're turning, it's turning a Mack truck or turning a huge ship. You're taking a course that today's action is going to create results that could transcend both positive and negative, right? So if you go to water, you're not paying attention to your water bills for 3 months. Well, you might have a massive problem by the time you realize that you don't just snap your fingers and it's fixed. That's now maybe another 2-3 months of you fixing it, find the result, fixing the problem. Same thing with ultra running, right? So you run 100 miles, the first 25 miles might be great. Then 26 mile, the world blows up. And then you just have to say, okay, so what do I do now? And just look at, I just got to get to that next step and look at that next step and see where it goes. And a lot of it is, okay, can I get to that next tree? And then eventually, can I get to the bridge? Can I get up to the next aid station? And from there, one foot in front of the other. And just like anything else, You do it. You say, okay, all I got to do is one more step. Can I do one more step? Yes. Okay. Can I do 2 more? Sure. Can I do 10 more? Sure. And sooner or later, you look back and 100 miles, it's done.
Wow, that is amazing. Can't imagine.
I ran Honolulu Marathon. I ran Maui. So I've run some fun ones over there. I was trying to do the Hurt 100 this year, but it's in January, but it got postponed. So I'm looking forward to doing that one, 2022. That's on my bucket list for sure.
Nice. Yeah, Dave Goggins ran the Hurt 100.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. What an awesome race.
Yeah. So what is your superpower?
I'd say kind persistence, I think would be my superpower. I go for this is that I'm persistent in a good way, that I will outlast. I will find the right answer. Even if you're told no 100 times, I'll if I believe it's there, I'll keep getting it to that answer.
So what is the biggest lesson that you've learned over your career?
Make sure that you're aligning. I've had a lot of different businesses, and usually where things don't work is that you don't have clear communication in the beginning. It's rather to have maybe potentially uncomfortable, hard conversations in the beginning than to have something, on the back end where it's not clear, what one thought the other was doing or vice versa. And it creates rift, right? I've had, partnerships years ago that have ruined friendships in a way just because we didn't do the conversations we need to have up front. And I'd rather have the friend than the business, right? But you need to have those talks. Those are the talks that save you in the future, just because everybody's clear and everybody's on the same page.
Completely agree. For the busy working professional who's working towards financial freedom, what advice do you have?
Be specific what you want. You can get it, but what does financial freedom even mean? And what does it mean to you? And what happens if you don't get it? And if you can lay that out where there's true cause behind it, well, then there's nothing stopping you. But traditionally, we all fail if we just have this kind of gray thought of what we want to do, because really there's no substance behind it. So kind of anything will do.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm chiming on that. So I would just add on that to be specific in what you want and then focus on only the vehicle that's going to get you there. There's a lot of people that have these, like you said, these visions of grandeur or whatever, even if it's specific or not, but then they're trying to get there 100 different ways. They got a shiny object syndrome. They got, every month or every couple months, they got a new business thing, and just pick one thing and focus on it. That's one of the, Warren Buffett's big things. When I read his biography of where he got to where he is, was just focus. He did one thing he was good at, and just everything else just did not matter. He just focused on that one thing to get to his very specific goal.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. You've been so generous with your time. So how can people reach out to you?
Sure. Yeah, you can find us at the Jason and Peely Project. Also, find me on Instagram, Jason Yarusi, or our website, Yarusi Holdings. Again, thanks, guys.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
All right. Awesome. Thanks. Hey, Duke, that was an awesome show. I told you Jason was going to be an awesome guest, right from the top, going from the common trap that people fall into when they start a real estate company. They're almost like a hobby. They start acquiring units. They start putting together this hodgepodge portfolio, and they're not really treating this company, this thing they're creating, as a business. And then moving forward, as they're scaling up to apartment complexes, they're not treating each complex as a business as they're acquiring it, to treat it as a business, looking at it as a business owner. So seeing Jason explain through that and making sure that you stay focused and have that clarity of what you're doing and very specific of your business plan of I'm buying a business here and looking at it through the lens of a business owner, not a real estate investor, is very, very important. And especially his key to success, over 800 units owned and under management is a huge success on their part. And also, his tips on scaling up were very important. I took note of that. One of the biggest things I took note of was them tracking deals. So it's very important is when you submit an LOI, you submit an offer, you might get a no response, you might get a rejection, you might just get nothing at all. And understanding that doesn't mean no forever. Like there's nothing that's finite in real estate. Everything's negotiable and everything will come around. It's just not, when you get a no, it just means not right now. So create a system to track LOIs, to track offers that you're putting in. And for us, we sometimes choose an easy Excel or we can use things like a better system like Monday or Asana or something like that, where you can track, here's where we engaged them the first time, create a calendar reminder. Okay, next month, let's re-engage that seller again, or that owner or that broker again, and see if the seller, their motivation has changed. And a lot of times they will. And I've heard over and over again of the persistence of successful investors, where they go out and they can circle back 6-9 months later and get a deal closed that the first 2-3 offers were rejected on. So that is an awesome point and thing that Jason does, is they have a system created to where they have a re-engagement process to keep track of deals that they're interested in. Another thing I took note of was in the way that they work with local police. We do that in our company as well. Every time that we're looking into a property, we get under contract, we call the local police and the local sheriffs. There's a distinction between the two. So you want to know not just the local police, but also the sheriffs as well, about how often they get called to this neighborhood or this property. They really won't have any reason to tell you anything but the truth. So that is an awesome strategy. And then he takes it one step further of actually working with local law enforcement to get rid of some bad actors, which was awesome. Again, as a business owner, you're trying to reposition this property. You're trying to either rebrand, you're trying to lift it up a little bit, and get the residents confidence that you're here to take care of them, and you're going to provide a clean, safe, affordable housing for them. And this is just one way you do that as the business owner. Make sure you get rid of all the bad actors in that neighborhood. Also, I took note of this, and we didn't really touch on it too much in the call, but I did write it down. I did take note of it to circle back around now, is when you're talking about financing, I don't know if you caught that, but you can get a lot of different terms from different lenders, agency debt, community debt, difference between IO structures and prepayment penalties, and structures like that. But there is no really the perfect loan. It's all just tools. And that's what he mentioned it's the right tool for the job. And that's one of the things that you have to look for as you're doing your due diligence, is what is the right tool for this job to close this deal. Sometimes it might be a community bank. Sometimes it's agency debt. Sometimes it's bridge loan. You have to be versed in all of them so you can deploy the right tool for that property, for that strategy, because it's going to be different for every single deal. And that goes for financing as well as your structure. So as a GP structure or a syndication structure or a JV or a partnership, each structure is going to be different because you're going to have to come up with a different strategy for that specific deal. So don't think of it as like a progression into one strategy over another, but being versed on all these strategies so you can deploy the right tool for the right job. So I thought that was an important point that he made. I just wanted to circle back around and dive into that a little bit more. And then also the tips on energy conservation strategy, the water. That's speaking to my heart of doing the water conservation. Go and change the toilets out, do the water low flow fixtures. Have the plumbers do the sweep of the whole grounds to look for any kind of water leaks, because that is quite literally your money flowing right down the drain. It doesn't get any more wasteful than utilities getting dumped down the drain. So we've had struggles with it in our properties, and we're closing them up now, closing those gaps up now. But it's something that you need to stay cognizant of as a property owner, and constantly looking at these utility bills to catch those leaks or those issues quickly, so you don't realize it a quarter down the road or 6 months down the road, and then starting to realize, holy crap, our energy usage is off the charts. You want to be engaged constantly with utilities and the property manager to spot those charges fast and to get them squared away quickly.
And if you found value in this podcast, please subscribe so you can get the latest episodes. We would love it if you give us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher. If you know anyone who might resonate with today's podcast, please share the episode with them. To connect with like-minded investors, join our Facebook group, Honolulu Multifamily and More. If you're interested in connecting with us, go to tricityequity.com to learn more. See you next time.